So it's often said that we only use 10% of our brains, and if we could just use a bit more of it, we'd all be geniuses. Well, if you believe that, then next time you're driving, try using more of your car to go faster. You know, press the brake and the accelerator and the clutch at the same time and see what happens. In 1992, I met a man with a very special brain. He came into our lab at Imperial, where I was doing my PhD in medical physics. And he volunteered to be part of some research we were doing. And we wanted to measure the magnetic field that his brain produced using these extremely sensitive measuring devices called superconducting quantum interference devices. It's not really physics unless it's got the word quantum in it, is it? So he was very nervous, partly because he'd just had surgery. He had electrodes coming out of the front of his face because he'd had electrodes implanted very deeply in his brain so we could measure the electric currents there. And as soon as we started the experiment, his measurements went through the roof, and I started to get rather frightened. I was only 22 at the time. And the reason was he was convulsing and having contortions, and then he passed out. He had very severe epilepsy, and that was why we were working with him, because we hoped that our technique could help. And I learned on that day that really every part of our brain does something. So using more of it isn't going to make you smarter any more than using more of your car is going to make you go faster. And it was very clear watching what happened to him. The 10% myth, though, just won't go away. It's been around for such a long time, and I think perhaps the reason for that is in our experience, we know that intelligence is something that varies, right? We all have good days where you feel like you're a rock star and you can do anything, and then you have bad days. On my bad days, I give myself a pat on the back if I put my pants on the right way. We grew up inside this belief that intelligence is fixed, that our brain, our hardware is fixed. And so inside that story, if your intelligence is changing, it makes more sense that you would be using more or less of your hardware. And I think IQ tests reinforce this idea. In fact, the Q in IQ stands for quotient, as if there's some quota that you're given at birth, and that's your lot for life. Has anyone here had an IQ test? I can see people getting a bit nervous now. Don't worry, I'm not going to ask you your score. No, actually, I'm going to test you all right now. Let's see how many geniuses we've got in the audience. Who's good at numbers? Who thinks they're good at numbers? Nobody. I thought we saw lots of scientists and engineers. Anyone who thinks they're terrible at numbers and finds who gets scared when they hear the word trigonometry or hypotenuse? Okay, we've got a bit of a mix. Okay, so I'm going to read a number to you. Just pay attention. I'd just like you to remember it. 3.141592653588979. Okay, now you might have recognized that was pi, the first 14 digits. So who already knew pi because of work or science to more than 4 digits? Okay, so you're already a genius. You can sit out of this. Everybody else, repeat back the number. No? Oh, come on, I just said it. All right, let's try something a bit easier. I'll give you a phrase, and same deal, pay attention and repeat it back to me. So the phrase is, wow, I made a great discovery, my memory sucks. Wow. Fantastic. So here's the thing. Your memory doesn't suck. Your memory rocks because you just remembered the first 8 digits of, the first decimal places, 8 decimal places of pi. If you count the letters in that expression, you'll see that it matches the digits in pi. So without even trying, you just managed to remember an 8 decimal place number. Now, in my opinion, geniuses reproduce numbers instantly. So if you agree with that, repeat back to me now, yes, Gruff, geniuses reproduce numbers instantly. Yes, Gruff. And now you've remembered it to 14 decimal places. So you're all geniuses. Your brain is amazing, and if you're taught how to use it, you can do far more than you realize. Now, you might be thinking, okay, this is a trick. Geniuses have special brains that they can do something different to normal people. Well, Einstein was the poster boy for genius, and he certainly didn't think he was special. In fact, every single one of these legends actually had learning difficulties. None of them could spell. They had between them Asperger's, ADHD, dyslexia, dysgraphia, stuttering. And maybe we can educate genius. Laszlo Polgar studied the lives of 400 geniuses at university, and he found that they all had something in common. They started at a very young age, and they studied intensively. And he decided that, excuse me, I'm just going to get some water. He decided that he could turn any child under the age of 5 into a genius, and he set out to prove it with his 3 daughters. In 1989, Sophia entered a chess competition in Rome, an open tournament. She was the only girl. All of her opponents were in their 30s, 40s, and 50s. There were 4 grandmaster chess players, and she was 14. She annihilated her opposition with a victory so decisive it made front-page news globally, and to this day, it's considered one of the strongest chess performances ever in a competition. It's become known as Sophia's sack of Rome. Sophia's webpage says, I'm proud to be the middle sister, even if I'm the weakest of the 3. Because her older sister, Susan, became #1 female chess player in the world age 15, and her younger sister, Judith, is generally considered the strongest female chess player of all time. Until the Polgar sisters arrived, chess was pretty much a man's game. Men didn't believe that women could play chess. They faced an enormous amount of sexism and prejudice. And often when men started to realize they were losing to a girl, they began to complain of headaches and that they were feeling ill. Susan says, "I've never beaten a healthy man at chess." Stereotypes about intelligence are toxic, whether it's gender, race, learning disabilities, or genius. They're like, in my opinion, I think they're like evil fairies. They're sprinkling a magic sort of potential limiting dust over us. Well, we know how to dispatch fairies. Stop believing in them. Polgar's method obviously required children under the age of 5. So who's under the age of 5 here? Okay, better go home then. Think how much has changed since the 1970s, neuroscience and the technologies that we've had advance. We know now that adult brains aren't fixed. They grow network connections like plants, except the branches grow inwards, which is why we didn't see them. And our education system has stunted most people's intellectual growth at 10% of their full potential. So what we really need is horticulture and brain fertilizer. But why should we care about educating genius? Well, the reason is, as you know, AI is reaching superhuman levels in new domains at bewildering speed. I'm not an alarmist. I don't believe in the point at which in the future where AI will suddenly become superhuman and then upgrade itself on some rampage and become a super intelligence and then dispatch with us. I think that's a very myopic view myself. I don't think intelligence scales like that for a start. And the other thing that it appears to be blind to is the fact that we already have a godlike superintelligence on the planet upgrading, and it's hiding in plain sight. I'll come back to that. The urgent threat that we're facing is that in 10 years' time, 50% of the work that we do is going to be done by machines, faster, cheaper, and better than we do it. So we need, our global workforce has an urgent educational need. We need them to reskill as fast as possible, otherwise they'll be left behind, and nobody benefits if they're left behind. So we need EdTech capable of taking stunted adult brains and allowing them to grow again to the full potential that they had as children. And right now that looks impossible. So in my experience, there are 2 things that you can do when faced with the impossible. And the first is throw away what you're sure is right, because righteous thinking is surely the death of creativity. And we need to dig deeper than just challenging our ideas about education and technology. We need to root out fundamental limiting beliefs that we are holding to be true, possibly without even realizing, and they're limiting what it's even possible to think. The second thing that always works is cheat. Copy nature. She's been working on something similar for about 100 million years. When all mammals are born, they face an urgent educational need. They need to learn how to survive, and they could be born at the top of a city, or in the middle of top of a mountain or the middle of a city. They need to learn to hunt, to eat, to survive in a complex social environment, and they need to do that whether there are 5 animals or 1 million animals. The amazing solution that nature came up with is play. Play is an instinct, it's a learning instinct. Polgar understood this extremely well, but Victorian England didn't. In fact, I think one of the most damaging ideas that ever came out of Victorian minds was the separation of education and play, and work and play. The roots of that trace back to one of the oldest limiting beliefs in written history, and that is the idea that human beings have free will. From that idea immediately springs the concept of willpower, and the Victorians just loved willpower. Free will basically says that if you know you should do something, then that's enough to exercise the willpower to do it. Well, good luck with that, because knowledge doesn't motivate us, feelings do. You know you should go to the gym, you know you shouldn't eat that much chocolate, you know you shouldn't drink that much wine. Who goes to the gym more than they eat chocolate and drink? Okay, so those people have worked out how to put their feelings to use, because they're not doing it because of knowledge, they do it because it feels good to them, right? We are incredibly complicated biological machines. Now, whether you like that idea or not, and if we make feelings work for us, then the cause and effect machinery of our bodies just plays itself out. Willpower just doesn't come into it. Play is far more complex than just having fun. It involves the entire spectrum of feelings. Play involves pain, rough and tumble, making mistakes. And actually, pain is vital to learning. We have to learn from our mistakes. Nature shows us the balance, and when we get it right, learning is child's play. When I think about accelerated learning as a physicist, it's natural for me to think in terms of forces. So I think about what pushes learning forward and what friction forces slow it down. When we started Kwiziq, which is for adults to help to learn languages, we knew one source of friction was the inefficiency that post-beginners face as soon as they get past beginners, because there's no one path to learning a language. People learn different things, they forget different things, and very quickly, beginners' needs diverge. They started off all the same, and they suddenly diverge. And what happens is students no longer know what to do, and courses being linear can't match. So they get stuck in what I call language learning limbo, where they don't know what to practice, and they spend 10 times more trying to figure it out than actually practicing. The friction for that is so severe that their progress grinds to a complete halt in most cases. We built Kwiziq as an AI to figure that out for them. It learns what you know, what you don't know, what mistakes you're making, and serves up exactly what you need to do. The second thing we knew also was that regular low-stakes quizzing was far more effective than exams at the end. And the reason for that is because recalling information from your brain is actually far more important in laying down memories than the initial act of learning it. Another friction force we looked at is that repeated quizzing gets kind of tedious after a while, so we gamified it. We've got stars and shields and trophies and leaderboards, and honestly, students love it. They go nuts. We have people that we're worried they're too addicted, but it's a healthy addiction. They're learning. You can see from the user survey that just optimizing those three things, some of our students report learning up to 10 times faster. But what if we could optimize everything in learning? What if we could see all of the forces that slow down and speed up learning? Well, to do that, we need to widen the picture. Education from the past has been about content. Education from the future is about context. Genius education is about context. I've been asking myself recently, inspired by Maslow, what is the hierarchy of educational needs for genius? If we include biological and physiological needs, what makes our brain slow down on the days it's slow? Lack of exercise, we know that, poor sleep, food allergies, terrible nutrition, stress, gut bacteria, which can have a profound impact on cognition, is the new study of psychobiosis, which we're now understanding. AI's already started flipping the student-teacher ratio from 30 to 1. We hope it'll get to 30 teachers to every student, with one human teacher maybe and 29 AI teaching assistants. But future AIs will also be able to personalize context, not just content. MedTech will become part of EdTech. We know now at least 2 drugs that can go partway to restoring the neuroplasticity that children enjoy that allows them to learn so effectively. If we optimize all of the forces in the entire hierarchy of needs, then I reckon the results we'll achieve will be every bit as remarkable as Laszlo Polgar achieved with his daughters. Should we be afraid of machines? I mean, haven't machines always been better than us? Isn't that kind of the point? We make machines to improve our lives, take the back-breaking drudgery out of life. I've never been faster at calculating than a calculator. Have you? I can't run faster than a bike or cycle faster than a car. Since the wheel, technology has been part of us, not separate from us. Look, it's there, lighting us up, humanity. And see that picture with fresh eyes. Try to imagine that you're not human and look at the planet, because there are patterns and structures that appear and reappear over multiple levels of scale, all the way down to the microscopic. Structures that recycle waste appear at every level. Whole countries, cities, and recycling plants within cities perform essentially the same function as our kidneys and our liver, like the lysosomes in our cells. At every level, you'll see transport networks taking nutrition around a country, using trains and roads, or in your veins and arteries, or the microtubule networks inside our cells. There are even things like brains. So it's not clear, if you're an alien looking at us, whether this is one single planet-sized organism, or 200 the size of countries, or 8 billion the size of human animals, or 40 trillion the size of cells. At every level, every scale of life, it meets the criteria that we use to define a living organism. So viewed through this lens, humanity is a godlike superintelligence, and it's been upgrading itself for the last 2 millennia. It's billions of times smarter than any single one of us. And humanity grows, I think, technology like the way we grow hair and bones. Technology is no more humanity's enemy than we are. It's no less a part of humanity than we are. We use it to lift our limits, and in lifting them, we can fulfill our true potential as humans and as a species. Thank you.